So in the past 20 minutes, my whole life was just flipped upside down. So I'm out with my friends, and we're at Walmart, and all of a sudden my dad calls me. And he is screaming at the top of his lungs for me to get home, and then just hangs up. I couldn't even get a word in. I was so confused. So I call him back because I'm really confused. And all I hear is my dad and my sister screaming at each other, and then the phone hangs up again. So my friend drives me home really quick, and I walk in through the garage because my front door broke, and I'll explain why later. So I go in through the garage, and I'm going through the basement of the house, so I can hear everything that's going on upstairs. And my dad is screaming at the top of his lungs at my sister. Like, the screaming was like a married couple finding out that the other person cheated. It was insane. So I get to the top of the stairs, and I'm like, what's going on? And my dad's up in my sister's face, just screaming at her. My sister's just crying, and I'm like, and my dad turns around, and he looks at me, and he's like, Kayla, don't act all innocent. You didn't do your laundry. And I'm like, yes, I did. The laundry basket is in my room. And then he just stops talking because he knew he had nothing to yell at me about, and he was just coming at me backwards for no reason. Then he goes back to screaming at my sister, and then he goes, you're out of the house. Your mom's on her way to pick you up. And I was like, oh, my sister just got kicked out. So I go into my sister's room, and I start talking to her, and she's like, yeah, I just got kicked out because I didn't do my laundry. And because she didn't clean her room and other stuff like that. Basically just because she didn't clean. So I'm like, boy, what the hell? So like 10 minutes later, my sister's in my room, and we're just talking about everything that happened, and my dad comes in, and he's like, Ashley, your phone's getting shut off. Ashley's my sister, by the way. So she just starts crying even more because now she won't have a phone. And then like 30 minutes later, my mom shows up to pick her up. So I go out into the garage, and my mom and my dad are just like going at it a little bit. My dad's like yelling, and my mom's like, chill out. And it was just like crazy. So then my dad's like, why is the doorknob broke? Because this morning I was leaving my house to get the mail, and the doorknob literally just fell off in my hands. And I tell him how it just fell off in my hands, and he's like, I don't believe you because the doorknob was all bent and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, like I literally was just opening the door. So then he goes quiet, and he looks at me, and he goes, if you're not the one that bent it, then somebody else was. Meaning that somebody was trying to break in last night. And then all the puzzle pieces start going together. Because last night around midnight I was writing an essay, and my dog's laying in my bed, and he gets up and he runs downstairs, and he just starts barking at the front door. I don't think anything of it because sometimes he barks at his reflection, but I hear like subtle knocks on the door. But I'm just assuming it's like my sister or the wind or something. And then this morning when I go to leave the house, the doorknob falls off. And I didn't even notice the doorknob was like bent, and like the internals of the doorknob were like all mushed together. It looked like somebody took a hammer or a wrench and was trying to get the doorknob off. So now, even though I'm not kicked out, I have to go to my mom's tonight for my safety because now there's somebody trying to break into the house. And my dad's gonna get camera footage from the neighbors because they have a Ring camera. So yeah, that's like really good! So in the past 20 minutes, my sister got kicked out, and I found out that somebody's trying to break into my house. How's your Monday going?
That time, I got locked in a room with an unsettling man. When I was 18, I worked at my college's residence building at the front desk, and I think I almost got assaulted or murdered. You be the judge. During the summer, the building operated as a hotel. So 2.5 floors were hotel rooms, and half of the third floor were student rooms. The whole building operated with a hotel swipe key system that was pretty outdated, and all of the doors were powered by 4 AA batteries. If the batteries died, there was a decently lengthy process to replace them and reprogram the door. A dark-haired guy came to the front desk from inside the building while I was working an overnight shift at around 1 or 2 a.m. and said he left his key card in his room. I made him a new one and made my first error of the night. Hotel guests could have as many keys remade as they wanted. Students, however, were supposed to be given a temporary key card and charged $2. I gave him a new key for his room and asked if he was a student or hotel guest, and he replied, student. At this point, I should have checked our system to charge his account, but I was caught up doing administrative duties and forgot. Later on in the night, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m., he came to the desk again and said he couldn't get into his room. I asked if he just forgot his key again, and he said no, the door wasn't working. I asked if the light was coming on when he swiped his card, and he said no, so I figured the batteries were dead. I told him I'd have to change the batteries and went up to his room with him. He asked me for my name, and I told him. He didn't tell me his. I opened the door manually with a master key and told him I'd have to prop it open while I worked on the back panel to replace the batteries. He said, quote, no, it's okay, I'll close it. And closed and deadbolted the door locked. Really fucking weird, but I tried not to think about it. I had changed the batteries on plenty of other doors by this point, and some students were iffy about having their doors propped open for their room to be on display for anyone walking by. He also had a really thick accent. I gave him the benefit of the doubt and thought maybe it was also just a language barrier issue. At this point, though, I really felt like something was wrong, but I tried to ignore it so I didn't freak him out. While I was trying to focus on fixing the door as quickly as possible, he kept trying to entice me to go further into the room. He held out a little gold house key and said, "I have a key, go get it," and threw it under the bed. He said there was a leak under the fridge. He just kept trying to get me down on the ground, throwing random problems at me. Obviously, I told him no. I'd send maintenance up in the morning to take a look at anything that was broken. I had my back to him, and he asked me if I would take off my glasses. I said, "No, I need them to see." His tone of voice changed, and in the most steady, chilling manner, he said, "Ella, it's okay. You can take them off." And from behind me, he reached around and tried to take off my glasses. I swatted his hand away and, trying to remain composed, said, "No thanks, I need to keep them on." Even though he was creeping me the fuck out, I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to get in trouble if he complained about me or risk upsetting him and having him yell at me. I got up to grab something from the door repair kit and undid the door deadbolt and opened it up in the process. He jumped towards the door to close it again and told me to keep it closed. I told him no, I had to open it to start reprogramming it from the front. While I held the door open with my foot and grabbed something from the door repair kit, he started playing with the little wispy hairs at the top of my forehead and trying to touch my shoulder. I swatted him away again and asked him not to touch me and focused on getting the fuck out of there. He once again tried getting me to follow him into the bedroom, saying the bed was broken. This is when I realized that he had nothing in his room. No dishes in the kitchen, no shower curtain in the bathroom, no sheets on the bed, nothing. This wasn't his room.
Oh my God. I didn't think about that till just now.
My brain once again went back to the international student theory, thinking he had just arrived today and hadn't gotten a chance to buy anything yet. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew something was wrong. I fiddled around with the door for a few more seconds before announcing that it was fixed, and quickly gathered the door kit and left. Before I had reached the elevator, he came back out without his shoes on to follow me. He tried to get back in to get his shoes and called out, "Ella, the door isn't fixed. You need to come back." I went back and opened the door manually and told him if the door was broken, I'd have to send up maintenance to fix it in the morning. I knew he was going to follow me to the elevator again, so I closed the door behind me once he went inside and ran down the stairwell as fast as I could. When I got to the front desk, I checked the computer and saw that the room he was in was supposed to be empty. It wasn't a student room or a hotel room. I locked myself in our back office and called campus security. He came down a few minutes later and went behind the desk. I yelled at him to get on the other side and wait, now that I knew he wasn't a resident. He tore the corner off a slip of paper I had sitting on the desk and drew a flower on it, then put it back on top of my papers. When security arrived, he ran back up to the empty room and tried convincing them he lived there so he wouldn't have to leave. He kept showing them his key card, which had decided to work on the door again somehow. They escorted him back downstairs and came to ask me if he really did live there. Obviously, he fucking didn't. That's why I called you guys crying and terrified. He kept interjecting to argue he did live there, but couldn't even recall his room number when asked. So they told him he would have to leave if he couldn't prove he lived there. At one point, he tried to tell them he was my friend, at which point I poked my head out of the office to say that I literally had never seen him before that night. He left. We didn't call the police because he didn't actually do anything, but it was still fucking unsettling.
Hanging out with some friends of mine, and my mom invites my grandma over to my house, okay? So my grandma and my mom are having like this little get-together thing. My friends and me are separated, doing our own thing, watching TV. And about like, I'd say 30 minutes after my grandma getting there, we decide to go and hang out with everyone on the deck. We go outside where the grill is, my mom's grilling, and we're all just hanging out, right? And I'm talking to my grandma, because I haven't talked to her in a long time. Now, usually, I hang out with my friends, and they smoke weed and shit like that. I don't like to smoke anymore. I used to smoke a lot when I was younger, but I was pretty much not smoking weed at this time, okay? Sometimes here and there, if someone offered it to me, I'd take a hit, but I wouldn't usually do it. I just get a lot of anxiety. But everyone ends up going inside for a little bit. My friends were getting hot. They went inside. My mom had to go and grab something out of the kitchen. And I'm just sitting there alone with my grandma. And she's like, "Hey, do you want to smoke?" And she smokes cigarettes. I was like, "No, I'm good, grandma." And she's like, "I'm sorry for assuming you smoked. I just figured since you're getting older, you were into that stuff like most teens." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Okay, well, let me know." And I was like, "Huh?" Like, I was confused. Like, I'm like, is my grandma trying to get me to smoke a cigarette? Like, what? But I kind of ignored it. And I watched her pull out the cigarette. At least I thought it was a cigarette. And I realized it was a self-rolled one, like she rolled it. And the minute she starts smoking it, I can smell something. I'm like, that doesn't smell like a cigarette. Grandma, are you smoking pot? And she's like, what? And I was like, is that pot? And she's like, yeah, it's a spliff. I'm like, Grandma, what the fuck? When did you start smoking weed? She's like, I've been doing it ever since you were a baby. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, yeah, I didn't offer you a cigarette. You thought I was offering you a cigarette? I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, well, in that case, yeah, I'll have some. And she's like, oh, I knew it. And she hands me it. And I can't believe my fucking eyes because, like, you gotta understand, like, when I was younger and I used to smoke weed, my mom used to go to my grandma and rant about how, like, I was smoking and she caught me doing it and how bad of a kid I was being. And my grandma would have these talks with me about how it's evil and how you shouldn't do that. And then I find out that my fucking grandma is the reincarnation of Snoop Dogg himself. So I'm just like, okay, I'm really smoking a J with my grandma right now. Like, what the fuck? So I asked my grandma, I'm like, hey grandma, remember a couple of years ago when I used to get caught smoking weed and you would pull me aside and have these long talks with me about how bad it was and like how you should never do that stuff and that it'll kill me? And she's like, oh please, that's all just propaganda. I'm like, yeah grandma, you used to like offer me a J, like, come on, what kind of grandma are you? Obviously I was fucking with her. She was like, shut up. But I still couldn't believe my eyes. I was like, I'm really smoking with my grandma right now. And I usually don't smoke. Back then I didn't smoke. But like, come on, my fucking grandma was asking me to smoke with her. Like, I couldn't say no to that. Like, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity to smoke with my fucking grandma. So anyway, it gets better, okay? So after my grandma hands me this joint and I'm smoking with her, we're talking and we get on the topic of YouTube and what I've been doing lately. And she's like, yeah, I've watched a bunch of your videos lately. Your stories are funny as hell. And I was like, there's no fucking way I'm actually like not dreaming right now. Like, my own grandma just passed me a fucking J and now she's saying that she watches my YouTube videos. I didn't know whether to feel like awkward that my grandma saw my channel and shit like that or like honored. I still don't fucking know. I don't know. I just think that's so crazy. I can't even lie. I actually thought my grandma didn't know how to use the internet. Like, I didn't fucking know that. So anyway, after we're smoking, talking about YouTube, shit like that, my mom finally comes back out and a couple of my friends did too. And my mom sees me and my grandma smoking and she's like, what the fuck? She's like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, look, I don't know. Grandma offered it to me. I'm not going to pass up on this. My mom just started laughing because like, I can't really do anything. She's not going to get mad at me. Like, I'm an adult now, shit like that. So we're just smoking, talking. My friends start joining in. It was all in all just a great time, okay? My mom didn't smoke, for anyone asking. My mom is a very, very, like, straight edge person. She doesn't like to smoke weed because she says that it makes her too lazy. And I could believe that. Could definitely do that to some people. But yeah, all in all, just a fucking crazy night, crazy story. And like, seriously, just fucking crazy, man. I don't even know what to say. But yeah, that's pretty much where the story ends. We always kind of went about our night after that. I went out with some friends of mine. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of the story, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this funny little story. Please leave a like on the video if you guys enjoyed it. Leave your stories in the comments down below. Subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you guys all later.
So this one time, I go to get my hair done by this new girl that I've never gone to before. I make my appointment for 6 o'clock, right? I pull up to her salon at exactly 6 o'clock. I'm on time. I walk up to the receptionist desk. I'm like, hi, my name is Ash. I'm here for my appointment with, we'll call her Jackie. The receptionist points to Jackie. Jackie's in the middle of finishing some girl's wig. So she goes, if you got something to do, I mean, mind you, no hi, hello, no, I'm sorry, I'm running late, I'm in the middle of something, nothing. Just, if you got something to do, Jackie, why would I have anything to do? It's 6 o'clock. My appointment is 6 o'clock. And she continues on to be like, I got her head to do, and I still got her head to do. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, how much time do you need? What time should I come back? She's like, I need like 2. Jackie, 2 what? 2 seconds? 2 minutes? 2 slaps to the fucking head? What the fuck do you mean 2? Speak in full fucking sentences, bitch. I desperately need my hair done. Like, I was going on a date the next day. Like, my hair looked crazy. I had no choice. Otherwise, I would not have returned for Jackie to touch my head with that terrible service. And I'm also thinking to myself, like, you know you have 2 more people. You need 2 more hours to get it done before you can even start me. Why didn't your receptionist call me? Why didn't you send me a courtesy text, a courtesy phone call, DM me on IG, send pigeon mail, something? Like, why do I need to come? I got up out of my bed after a long day of work to come to your salon for you to tell me I need another 2 hours. I could have been home. But I waited the 2 hours. I come back at exactly 8 o'clock on the dot, expecting Jackie to be ready for me. Guess what? Do you think Jackie was ready? No, she wasn't. I sat in the salon for another 35 to 40 minutes before she started me. And you want to know the worst part about all of this? The worst part about all this, I didn't even really like my hair. I didn't even like my hair. My edges were white. The little part that she wraps around and did a half up, half down, the little part she wrapped around the pony, by the time I got home, white. And before y'all come, oh, it's just the freeze spray, add a little water. I don't want to add a little water. The other girls that I go to, I ain't got to add water. They got me. Girl, what? All of this is to say, y'all are unprofessional. Figure it out. Take some classes on how to give better customer service. Speak to your customers with some freaking respect. Send me a courtesy text if you're running late. Because if I would have been that late, I would have had a $5,000 fee. Okay? Moral of the story, don't go to Jackie.
Now check it out. We were in a place that I can't really say where, but it was frigid cold water, and we had to test our mask out. Now we got in the bay to test our mask out, okay? It is very, very important that you don't have a leak in your mask. And there's always some type of leak, especially when you have a big monkey face like this. But we were putting our face down in the water like this and standing about waist deep like this. Because seals don't want to get wet if unnecessarily. So we were bent over like this, and we had our mask like this, and we were in the water like this. It is cold, murky, dark water. It's snowing outside. We're miserable. Grown men putting on diapers with beards on is never a good scene, okay? Now, we're testing our mask out like this, and I notice, okay, because I'm always observant, right? Okay? But some guys aren't. And there's one guy that we have, his name is something, and he's over there, and he's in the deep, and he's like this waist deep water, and he's looking in the water like this with his mask. And I look across the bay, and I see this white albino male seal, like a real seal, like the animal type. And he's over there, and he stands up like this, and he beats his chest, or like flaps his things, I don't know, but it was scary, and he was big, and he was real big because the distance he was at was really far away, several hundred yards, but he stood out because all the other ones were black, and he was this albino male white seal. He stands up. He obviously is very pissed off that we're in the water in his domain. I'm waist deep. I see this, the other seals see this, and we instantly know what's going to happen. The big male albino seal jumps in the water head first, dives away across the bay. He's headed directly at us like a straight-on torpedo, okay? I bolt. Hey, leave no man behind. Yeah, right. That's true in combat, but not when you're facing a albino seal coming at you underwater. So we bounce, right? Well, we all bounce a little too quick. We don't tell somebody. That guy is in the deep water, way in the deep, and he's still frolicking around, playing with his mask, trying to get a good seal, and he's just not paying attention. Hey, it's on him. We couldn't go back into this combat scene and get him. I'm sorry. We had to leave him. And so what happened was, all of a sudden, that albino seal didn't even come up out of the water, and it hit him so hard, and he flew out of the water, and his mask flew out of the water. He's bleeding all over his face. We never see the white albino seal. But later on, we found out, he comes out, he goes, bro, and he was bleeding on his face. He was like, he had his dive knife swinging around like he's going to do something with that. You didn't do nothing with your knife. No. Anyway, he's bleeding. He said this huge white head came up out of nowhere as he's looking in the water and bit him directly on the face. But his mask stopped the teeth, but it still ripped his mask off. That's the kind of stuff you got to deal with when you go in the military, okay? Stop worrying about things.